Well, thank you, Mr. JT.
I know his daddy.
And you knew my granddaddy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start with a word of prayer.
Yeah. We need it.
Okay, let's do that. Father, thank you for opportunity for us to be able to talk about history, believing that you have been involved in it. And Lord, I pray that you would help us to think through that and that we would learn the lessons from it. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Evan, do you want to ask the first question or you want me to start it?
You can start it.
All right. So, I want to get your thoughts and memories when you heard about Pearl Harbor.
How old are you, Evan?
I'm 14.
14. That's about how old I was when Pearl Harbor took place. I had no idea I'd go into the Army. But I was in high school and we heard about it. I mean, of course, I heard about it on radio. And we were living about 5 or 6 miles east of here on Riley Hill Road. We had a radio, but it was battery charged. It didn't have electricity. Didn't have running water. And it was a terrible thing. And there was a big uproar across the country. And if you ever go into war, the country needs to have all of its people ready to go to fight, be upset. Well, Pearl Harbor did that for our country. There were all kinds of fusses and fights going on, just like there are now with Biden and with Trump and all this. There were divisions, but when Pearl Harbor took place, the country was solid. It was 100% ready to go to war against Japan. And I was just a young boy.
It's around 14.
Yeah,
Yeah.
14, 15, somewhere along there.
Right. Okay. Go ahead, Evan.
Where did you serve in the war?
I served in the infantry in the Army. I was drafted, got a letter from President Roosevelt, said, "Greetings." That's the way this letter started. "You have been selected for the U.S. Army or for the U.S. military." I reported to Raleigh, and this is right after I graduated from high school. I mean, that's how long it was that the war was going on before I even went in. I went in September the 13th of 1944. Went to Raleigh. They accepted me, put me on a bus, sent me to Fayetteville. That's where I got my uniform. That's where I got really inducted into the Army. And we weren't there probably 2 or 3 days. And they put us on a train and sent me to Camp Croft, South Carolina, which is south of Charlotte, Owen, South Carolina. And I stayed there 16 weeks. Came home for Christmas, and I had finished my training. Stayed home for Christmas of 44, and I was report to New Jersey to a disposition center where you put on a boat and sent overseas. And I stayed up there about a week or two when they were getting all the boys together to load a big boat. And I left the USA.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
All right. I'll ramble a whole lot. Stop me if I'm going too far.
You're doing well. Doing well.
All right.
Kaden, you have a question?
All right, Cannon.
Ask him maybe where he went to, where he served.
You want to know where I went? I left New Jersey on a big ship. It was a French luxury ship that had been fixed, retrofitted, they call it, for Army transport. We had 10,000 soldiers on that ship.
Wow.
Now that's the time that Germany was sinking the ships on the east coast of North Carolina with their torpedoes, with submarines. We left New Jersey unescorted. We were right by ourselves. 10,000 soldiers, and we came down the coast of North Carolina and then headed across the ocean. The only thing I can reasonably think of is they didn't want that big ship in the North Atlantic where there were big storms going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Storms in the North Atlantic are pretty rough on ships. And I crossed the ocean and landed in Glasgow, Scotland. That's the northwestern part of England, the big island of England. Got off the boat, got in a train, and it went to Southampton, England. That's the southernmost part of the big island and closest to France. Got off the train, got on the boat, and went from there to Le Havre, France. They have a big memorial over there now, I think, so close by. Got on the boat, got off the boat at Le Havre, France. Am I going too far for you?
No,
All right, that gets me in France.
Yeah.
Got off the boat in France, got on a train and went north of Paris, somewhere north of Paris, France, and stopped at a French military army camp. And that's where they assigned us to the fighting force that were located all across the northern parts of France. This was right after the Battle of the Bulge. I got there right after the Battle of the Bulge. It took 3 days on the train to go from Le Havre, France, to that French army base. And we were put in boxcars on the train, no seats. And there were enough seats enough places that you'd sit down real close together on both sides of the boxcar and would fill it up. And they had a big barrel in there that you'd get water to drink and canned food to eat. And when you went to the bathroom, you'd open the door to the boxcar and hang out. And it really didn't make any difference if you were going through a little town or if you were going through the countryside. When you had to go, you had to go. And you were hanging out the boxcar door.
Do you remember the type of foods that were in those cans?
It was all kinds of food, mostly hash, beef hash, beans.
Yeah.
Very little food.
Did you hear about the reports of the Battle of the Bulge while you were in the Army?
Oh yeah, we knew all about it.
Yeah.
And that at that Army camp is where I was assigned to Patton's 3rd Army, 94th Division. That division has been decommissioned. So as soon as the war was over, they shut it down. And all of my records went to somewhere out in the Midwest. And they had a big fire out there and burned.
Wow.
My records, most of them were burned.
Huh. Did you ever see Patton?
Yeah, but at a distance.
Right.
It wasn't close.
Right.
But going up to the front line, well, after we left that Army base, they put us on trucks, big, what we call 2-ton trucks, 6x6, whatever, probably 15, 20 men to the truck, and carried us to the front line. And it was night, and it was dark, and it was cold. The coldest winter they'd had in 50 years. And we got out of that truck, and somebody would take us and carry us to a foxhole and say, "You stay here." And you get in a foxhole with another soldier.
Yeah.
You were on the front line.
Yeah. You remember your feelings at that point?
The what?
Do you remember how you felt?
Well, it was all new. It was all different from what you could expect. And felt like you were in the world right by yourself. There was nothing that you were familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what kind of gun were you carrying into that foxhole?
When I got into a foxhole, I had a M16 rifle. And that's what I was trained as, a rifleman. But after the first day, they gave out a machine gunners, and they said, "You're it." Machine gunner's life doesn't last very long, because if you're on the front line and you shoot that machine gun, it goes, It doesn't make any difference how many riflemen are out there. All the folks that you're shooting at go try to knock out that machine gun.
Yeah.
So everybody's attention is on the machine gun.
Yeah.
We were in the woods, very similar to the woods over the backside of my farm. Trees that big, big fir trees. And this was after the Battle of the Bulge, so the Germans were retreating, but they were still a powerful force. And we were expecting a counterattack any minute. And Patton had sent word down through the ranks that we would not go surrender, and that we were not going to retreat. If it took a boxcar load of dog tags going to Washington every day, we would go hold the line. Now, what that means, you know what a dog tag is?
Yes.
It's a little chain that goes around your neck, and you have 2 dog tags hanging on. If you get killed, they prop your mouth open, stick one of those dog tags in it. The other dog tag goes back to Washington. And they told us that if it takes a boxcar load of dog tags going to Washington every day, we'll not go back up. That gives you real confidence.
Yeah.
You're not gonna run. You're not gonna give up. You're not gonna surrender. You're gonna stay there till you die. And you find out when you're on the front lines that everything is expendable. You know, we try to take care of our cars. You know, we wash them and clean them. We try to take care of our gun, you know, keep it clean. But you wouldn't mind having to give up your vehicle. You wouldn't mind even giving up your gun. But if you give up your dog tag to go back to Washington, you've given up your life. You're dead.
Yeah.
And you're no more valuable to the Army than a gun or a car or anything else. Everything is expendable.
Mr. JT, were you a believer at that time in Christ?
Yeah, I believed, and I'd been to church all my life. And a man that says he's not afraid in wartime, he's a big liar.
Yeah.
I've laid out in the woods, big trees. There's no sign of any troops, but we're there. They know we're there. They got that artillery 5 miles away, and they shoot those big shells over into the woods. And they're designed, when they hit the trees, they explode and tear those big trees to 1,000,000 splinters. And they come down with force strong enough that a piece of wood that big around will go in the ground that deep. If you happen to be laying out there on the ground, one of them hits you, you're pinned to the ground.
Right.
Not only do you get killed by those splinters, the concussion is so bad that it will kill you. You don't get a scratch and you're dead. I mean, it just, artillery is a powerful weapon in wartime. One day I was laying out there, artillery started coming in real fast. We didn't have time to get in the foxhole. We didn't have time to take any kind of protection. So we just laid out flat on the ground, made the smallest target you could make. And usually what they'll start an artillery barrage, and then they'll send the troops in. When that quits, they send the enemy in to come in and finish you off. So you always expect a counterattack after artillery comes in. But I was laying out there, and another boy was laying right next to me. We didn't know where the troops were coming from, so I faced one way, he faced another. We locked our feet together, with the understanding if he saw anybody coming, he was going to kick me. If I saw anybody coming, I'd kick him, and we'd turn to meet the enemy. I had my machine gun, he had his rifle. And of course there were other men all around us. Artillery came in, lasted a few minutes. I didn't get hurt except my wristwatch. Dad had given me a Elgin wristwatch for graduation from high school. It took my right watch off my arm and tore it all to pieces. I didn't get a scratch. The boy that I was kicking, had our feet locked together. He never moved. Concussion of that went off and knocked the breath out of him, and it stayed out.
Wow.
He didn't get a scratch, but he was dead.
Wow.
That's life on the front line.
Yeah. Was that in January or February?
January, February,
Uh-huh.
March. They were the 3 months I was on the front line.
Okay, 3 months on the front line.
Well, see, in all of January, part of it was coming across.
Right.
Part of it was getting up to the front line, but some of January, all of February, parts of March.
Okay.
I was wounded about the 15th of March.
Was that artillery or was
Artillery.
it? Okay, artillery.
Artillery. Yeah, we'd taken a little old town over in France. They don't have houses between Knightdale and Wendell. All the people live in Knightdale, all the people live in Wendell, but nobody in between. Of course, they're not as big as either one of those. They're little villages, every 2 or 3 miles apart.
Yeah.
And we'd taken this little village and been there probably a day, maybe 2 days. And this movement was move on up to the next village, 2 or 3 miles away. So our boys were all in the road, and we weren't marching, we were just walking down the road. And before we got out of town, the artillery started coming in. I got a piece of artillery shell about the size of my little fingernail. It went to the bone.
Wow.
All around me, boys were torn all to pieces, killed, maimed. I mean, just an awful sight. That's the only wound I had.
Yeah.
Went to the bone. I didn't feel it. So after artillery quit, the rest of us, one that weren't killed, continued down the road. We were going to the next. And I noticed my boot was kind of sloppy. And I looked down and my leg was all covered with blood. I mean, my clothes were covered with blood and my boot was full of blood. So I stopped. This little house over there on the side of the road, edge of town. I sat down on the porch and was sitting there till the medic came by to pick me up. The folks in the house were French or German one, I don't know which. I couldn't understand them. And they came out and see if they could help me do anything. But the med came along and carried me out to a pasture, and a C-47 airplane landed in that pasture. Put 16 of us that were on stretchers. Took me 3 days to get up to the front line. Took me an hour and 15 minutes to get back to Paris. That's where I spent some time, in Paris.
Yeah. How long do you think you were in Paris recovering?
I was in there probably a couple of months. In Paris, they wouldn't let you on the outside on the street if you had a crutcher or had bandaged arm or something. Everybody on the street would look like a soldier ready to go. So they kept me in a compound until my leg healed and I could walk on it.
Huh. So the government was trying to protect their image.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting. Huh.
Wouldn't let you on. You didn't see anybody with any bandages or crutches
Right.
on the street. Nobody.
So the war ended in Europe while you were in the hospital?
While I was in the hospital, the war in Europe ended. And they didn't put me back in the infantry because of my leg was, that little hole was that big, went to my leg, but when they went to get it out, they cut a hole, cut, split my leg open that by and sewed it up.
Yeah.
In fact, they opened that thing up and stuffed it full of cotton bandage
Yeah.
so that as it healed, they made it heal from the inside, and they'd move those bandages out just a little bit every day until it healed all the way. They didn't let it heal on the outside and have infection on the inside.
Yeah.
That was interesting. That's the reason I stayed there so long. I mean, the wound didn't hurt, but curing it was terrible.
Right. Right. You still feel it today?
No.
Okay.
Now, when I came out, I didn't feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, they healed it.
Yeah.
They healed it clean.
Now, when you came out, the war in Europe ended, but you were still in the military.
I was still in the military, and they put me in a medical depot. I was secretary in a medical depot. But they were planning for us to go to Japan. I mean, they were. But in that medical depot, I was assigned to Fougue, France. And you think in a medical depot you have medicine. Well, you do. We had 60-gallon barrels of rubbing alcohol. We furnished alcohol for all the hospitals and all the stations all over Europe. We had bed sheets, just thousands of bed sheets. We had everything that a hospital needs and everything that a medic would need to go in his back. We had trucks to move that stuff. It was a tremendous operation. I had no idea a medical depot would be that way.
Right. Yeah. So, before you got orders to go to Japan, the war ended in Japan.
Yeah, while I was at Fougue, they sent me up to Antwerp, Belgium to unload a ship of stuff that was coming to the medical depot. Got to Antwerp, Belgium. Of course, we were using German prisoners to do all the work. We were supervisors.
Yeah.
We didn't do any work. But got to Antwerp, Belgium, had a ship there loaded with toilet paper. That's all. That was all that was on that whole ship. We unloaded a ship load of toilet paper, shipped it back to the medical depot.
Yeah.
But after I was at Fougue, France for a while, they set up a headquarters in Berlin, Germany, in the capital of Germany. And they sent me up there with a few men to set up a depot up there.
You said how long you were in Germany?
I was there for a month or two.
Okay.
I was there, and my orders came through to come home. I had made application earlier so that as soon as anybody got released, I wanted to come home because my daddy had a real bad heart situation, and he was a farmer. He had 5 or 6 tenants on this farm, and he wasn't able to look after them. So my orders came through in Berlin for me to come home right after the Japanese surrendered.
Yeah.
And I left Berlin. I had a chest full of rifles, German rifles, and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah.
And I told the boys that I was with, I said, ship that home to me, because my orders came through and I was leaving quick. They were supposed to put me on a plane, but something happened to the plane and they put me on a train. I went to Paris, France. They gave me all the records that were on in Europe. They gave them to me. I had no time limit. I could stay in Paris or anywhere I wanted to, as long as I wanted to. but I was ready to come home.
Yeah.
I didn't waste any time. I went back to the harbor, called the boat, came home.
That chest ever make it back?
Huh?
Did that chest ever make it back?
It went to somebody else, evidently.
What
Yeah,
were-
I had a couple of nice swords in there.
The swords from Germans?
From Germans,
Yeah. Yeah. Probably some Mausers or some of those weapons.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, I wished he could, but I was willing to give it up.
Right, right. What's your memory of the people of Germany after the war? What were they like?
They were some of the nicest folks I've ever met in my life. We had a whole bunch of girls working in the office in Berlin. One of them looked a whole lot like that one right there. I mean, she really was a beautiful girl. And she was living with her mother in an apartment house. Her daddy was a professor at a university. He died or something happened to him. So she was working. She took up some time with me and showed me all the damage that was done in Berlin and all the places that they hid when the bombs were coming. And the Berlin, the business section of Berlin was 95% destroyed. But we were living in an apartment house in the residential section, and it was about 5% destroyed. Hardly could tell that a war had been there. But she was a nice girl. Most of the girls in that office would make a deal with you. They would marry you if you'd bring them back to the United States and promise you that once they put their feet on American soil, you'd never see them again. They just wanted to get to the United States.
Yeah.
But this girl said she wanted to stay at home. She didn't want to come to the United States.
Interesting. And it probably worked out the best that she did.
I found somebody that looked just like her.
Right. What was the attitude of Americans when you came back to the country? Was it different in any way?
I don't know that I ever thought about America was like America.
Right.
I was glad to be home,
Yeah.
and everything was like it was.
Mm-hmm.
Before I went into the Army, when I was in high school, junior and senior year, I'd go to Raleigh and walk down the street, and all the people would look at you as if to say, and with their eyes they told you, why are you here? My son's fighting, or my son has been killed.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you, big 6'2", 200-pound, healthy man? What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
You must be something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you felt uneasy.
Yeah.
I mean, me as a young boy, seeing grown people, old people look at you and said, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Something's wrong, because my son's in the military. Every able-bodied man was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them got killed.
Yeah.
A lot of them dead. So you kind of didn't want to go to war. I didn't. But you're kind of relieved once you get in. Because you put on a uniform, you walk down the street, and everybody glad to see you.
Yeah.
Glad to see you. Appreciate your service.
Yeah.
And the complete opposite before you went in wearing civilian clothes.
Right.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You know somebody that keeping you out?
Yeah. Pressure.
If you are, you're a grand rascal.
Yeah. Huh.
When I was drafted into the Army, I had a boy that graduated from high school with me, that his daddy was well connected politically. We went to Fayetteville. I told you I got on the bus, went to Fayetteville. The first day we were in Fayetteville, he got a 3-day pass. He came home.
Yeah. Huh.
And he used that for probably 6 months, but they finally got him. His daddy's politics gave out.
Right.
He got him in the service.
Right. What was it like to have faith in being on the front lines?
I don't know. I really don't know. You're scared to death when the shells coming in.
Yeah.
You have a lot of time that everything is perfectly quiet. Nothing happens. I know people that did not have faith, and they behaved something awful.
Mm-hmm.
That day that I was wounded, it was probably 200 or 300 of us in that group that stayed there and was leaving out. I'd say a third of them were drunk. You have all kinds in the Army.
Yeah. Are you coping with
Well,
stress?
they'd been in this little village.
Yeah.
They'd found the liquor and they drank it.
Yeah.
Going into war.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what was on those people's mind, but it was never my mind to get drunk in a war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Need all of your senses.
Right. Right.
You see all kinds. We had one man that was a lieutenant, and he was about the sorriest fellow you've ever seen. The boy said, you know, it took the Congress of the United States to make him a gentleman. Make him a gentleman. You know, officers in the Army are gentlemen.
Right. Right.
Said it took the U.S. Army, the Congress, to make him a gentleman.
It certainly wasn't his conduct. Huh?
So you have all kinds of people in the Army. They all dress up, they look just alike, but they're not.
Right.
Just like it is out here.
Right. Was there anyone you kept in contact with from your military days?
Not a one.
Yeah.
Not even one. There was one man in the medical depot that I got to know very well. And when I got married, he sent me a vase, but a very expensive vase. Wood. I believe his name was Wood. I forgot his name. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he said when the Army left North Africa,
Yep.
they landed at Sicily on his granddaddy's farm.
Huh. Wow.
But that man said he was in the Army in 1941. He said, I had served my time, and on Christmas of 41, I was getting out.
Mm.
And when the war ended, he was still in the army.
Didn't quite work out like he did. Huh?
He said I had served my time. I'd served my 2 years, and I was getting out Christmas of 1941.
Yeah.
In 1941, on December the 7th, is when Pearl Harbor took place.
Right. How about that? Well, I was thinking about the time you were going to the hospital after being wounded was probably about the time my granddad was getting on a ship. He was in the Navy.
He was in the Navy.
He was in the Navy, and they were getting ready. He had orders. He was a destroyer, or cruiser, and they were going to go to the islands and headed toward Japan.
Yeah.
Of course, it took forever to go on ships, and the war ended on his way to Japan.
That was a great day.
It was a great day.
That was a great day.
I probably wouldn't be here otherwise.
A lot of people died.
Yeah.
But it was very few that were in the infantry that got the Purple Heart or got the combat infantry badge. And I paid particular attention when you see on TV these old Army officers, they're all, 50, 60, 70 years old, and they have ribbons that go all the way down the chest. They get that combat infantry if they've earned it.
Yeah.
They always put it on top.
Yeah.
That's the most prize. That's more of a prize than the Purple Heart.
Mm. Yeah.
To be out there fighting.
Right. So that's the one you're proudest of.
Yeah, that's one.
Is that in the center one there?
With a roof, with a rifle laying across.
Okay. Yeah.
Silver wreath with a rifle laying across.
Right.
Combat infantry.
So see the Purple Heart.
Yeah, Purple Heart.
What are the other three?
Well, you get a ribbon for being in Europe. You get a ribbon for good conduct, and if you've done something they think is important, they give you a Bronze Star. I got a Bronze Star.
Okay. All right. So that was on one of the frontline activities.
Yeah.
With the machine gun. Do you remember how heavy that machine gun was?
Well, yeah, it was heavy.
Yeah.
And it took two other men to supply you with your arms.
Right.
They brought the ammunition.
Right.
And it's 250 rounds in a box of ammunition. They put 2 boxes in one end, 2 boxes in the other. You got 2 men.
Yeah. So guys, if you ever see on TV when it has that belt of bullets that come through, that's kind of the gun, the M60 or what?
Yeah, it's a 30 caliber.
30 caliber.
But it's 250 rounds in a belt.
Wow. And how long did it take to get through a belt, 250 rounds? Depends, I guess.
You hold the trigger down and it'll empty that belt mighty quick.
Wow.
Half a minute or a minute.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of ammunition.
But what you do, you don't want to attract all the attention.
No. No.
So you reach up. What happened to me one day, we were moved up and through places very familiar with looking my farm back here.
Yeah.
Only it was just hundreds of acres of woodland. But paths go through there. And we were on this path moving the whole outfit up and decided to stop, had orders to stop. So this path we were on was kind of on the side of a hill, and there was a bank on one side of the path about 4 or 5 feet tall. The other side of the hill, it went on down the hill. So out there was an opening, and there was a great big pile of manure outside of a barn. And my my sergeant told me, he said, set your machine gun on top of that manure pile. I told him, I said, Sarge, I was raised on a farm. I know how porous that pile of manure is. Bullets go through the bottom just as easy as go through the top. And we had a little discussion, but I finally set my machine gun up on that hill where it was 4 or 5 feet down.
Yeah.
I set it up on the edge and started straight up field with that. Well, we set up. Pretty soon after, maybe an hour or two, sniper out there started picking off our boys. Of course, everybody hit the ground and got covered. I had my machine gun set up there, and the fellow right beside me, I think his name was Ward. He'd been in combat in that outfit since D-Day. He landed at D-Day.
Wow.
He had in his pocket orders the next day they were going to send him back to the United States. He served his time on the front line. So he was well aware of how to behave on the front line. Well, this sniper kept picking off our folks. Just one, maybe every 15, 20 minutes, he'd shoot that sniper rifle. He never missed. Well, Wards told me, he said, Knott, and I every once in a while would reach up there with me down here. Yeah. And I'd spray the field, knowing they couldn't hit me. Right. You know, I wasn't aiming at anything. I just sprayed the field. He said, Knott, I believe I know where that sniper is. And he raised his head about that much above that hill. Sniper got him right there.
Wow.
He never moved, never said a word.
Wow.
I can see his helmet just as clear as I see you, going over and over and over up in the air. His helmet went up, had a steel helmet on. His helmet went up in the air about 10 feet. He was as close to him as you are.
Yeah.
That same day, that sniper shot the rear sight off my machine gun.
Wow.
He knew where I was.
Yeah. Wow. So
he had me zeroed in.
Yeah. You could have shot your hand, even just that little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
That is the one picture that I can't get rid of.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could have been me just as easy.
Yeah.
I was the rookie. He was the experienced man.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing. He'd been in contact on the front line June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, and this was in March.
Wow. Yeah.
Had it in his pocket, leaving the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how close he came to coming home.
Yeah. What you said, January is when it happened?
Somewhere,
Yeah.
it was February.
So you still had another month to go before?
February or March 1, somewhere along in there.
Right, right.
I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah.
But It was after I got there and before I got here. Somewhere.
Yeah. Just kind of thinking through how long you had to sit on that while you were out in the front lines thinking on that. That's I had a friend of mine on my other churches. His name is Garland Stansel from Stansel's Chapel area. He was North Africa area. Could have been under Patton, but he shared a time where they were kind of doing army crawl in battle, and constantly moving. And he saw that someone was picking up sniper leg, and he got up and moved. And one of his friends came up and got in the exact same spot. And no sooner had he got there, he got shot in the head.
They zero in on certain places.
Yeah. But I remember he told me that and crying. And he was like you.
Yeah.
Just one of those things that never leaves you through that.
I was in the hospital in Paris, and I was in a ward, probably, I don't know how many was in there, probably 50 to 100 people in that ward, just lined up beds. And practically everyone in that ward were from North Africa, under Patton's Armor Division.
Yeah.
And they would tell stories about Patton, and they would tell stories about what went on. But you got the idea that those men would follow Patton right over a cliff.
Wow.
They told me, he said, Patton believed in his tanks, and said when they made a tank attack, Patton would be in the front tank with the top let back, standing up.
Wow.
He said, you boys follow me. Said if anything happened to a tank that he was in, and it's common that the tracks get knocked off. If you shoot the track on the tank, it'll stop.
Yeah.
He gets right out of that tank and stops the next one and gets in that one.
Wow.
Follow me. Said he was always out front. He was always asking you to do what he was doing.
Yeah.
They idolized the man.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you what your thoughts were about General Patton.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Of course, he's kind of a controversial figure.
And the reason he was controversial was he slapped a man in Italy that was in the hospital because the man was having a fit. You know, he was crazy.
Yeah.
And he just slapped him. Act like a soldier.
Yeah.
Which is the best treatment that you can give a man that's gone crazy.
Yeah.
Get his back to attention.
Right. Yeah.
But he got bad publicity from that.
Yeah.
But these men that were with him in North Africa, and all of them wounded, you know.
Right.
They would have followed him over a cliff.
Yeah. Boys, you have any more questions left?
Did you ever remember hearing of the Doolittle raid in Japan?
No, not while I was in the Army. But Dr. Atkinson was a good friend of mine, and he reads all the time. He can tell you the names of all the people in the Doolittle Road, and he'd tell you all about Doolittle and how he got the position he was in, and what he did and how he did it, and the name of the airplanes that he flew on, and the name of the ship that carried him out. He knows all the details.
That's the one that owns the horse farm.
Yeah,
Chris
yeah, your sister worked over at his place.
Yeah.
But he reads all the time, and he is fascinated with biographies of famous men.
Right.
He really enjoys it.
Yeah.
And he likes to tell about
Right.
it. and he and I both have a lot of time on our hands, so I enjoy listening to it.
Yeah. I guess since the war, have you ever been able to go back to Germany or France?
Had no ambition to go back.
Right.
I don't even have the ambition to go to Washington to see Memorial. I've had opportunity on opportunity to have a free trip to go to Washington. We pay all the expenses. I served my time.
Right.
I'm not out on parole.
Right.
I don't care about reliving it. I don't watch war movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they tell such a small part of what goes on. You know, somebody asked me one time, said, "You were on the front line, explain the front line to me." Well, when I was in Europe, the front line started at the ocean edge over between France and Germany. France and England. Mm-hmm. And it goes all the way across France and Luxembourg and all those little nations, all around to Russia, which is up at the North Pole in certain parts of it.
Right.
What part of the front line do you want me to explain? All I know is maybe 500 yards wide in that 10,000 mile long front line.
Right.
I'll tell you what I see, but it's entirely different from what it was a mile down the road.
Yeah.
Or a mile down the road that way.
Right. Yeah.
You know, people, they make a movie. All it shows is what happened at the Battle of the Bulge, just 4 or 5 miles wide, just that one place.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we've got 1,000 miles on either side.
Right.
Not literal, but just unanswerable amount of footage on either side of that that you don't hear anything about.
Yeah. Any other questions left, guys?
Do you remember hearing about the atomic bombs dropped on Japan?
Yep, sure did. Was very interested in hearing because that stopped them from fighting.
Yeah.
I had a lady that lived in that brick house that I used to live in. Her daddy was the man that took a squadron of people and got off the Missouri and went into Tokyo Harbor and went up to where there were the big guns that were guarding the harbor and took sledgehammers and broke the firing pins on those big guns.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. And that man, after the war was over, he ran a dairy, and they got old and they sold the dairy out and all the children left. He turned to a missionary. He and his wife were foreign missionaries, and they were foreign missionaries in Russia, in Siberia. And he said in the wintertime it was so cold that you heated the house with coal, but in the mornings the ice would be on the inside of the windows in the kitchen that thick. Said it was cold.
Yeah.
But when he got to be 80 years old, they claimed he was too old to be a missionary. He had to come on.
Yeah. Anything else? All right. Well, Mr. JT, thank you. Thank you for your time.
I hope your picture turns out all
I
right.
hope so. I hope so
I'm gonna
too.
be interested.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it when you get it all together.
Right, we will. And we want to take a picture of you and the boys. And I'd like to take a picture of your medals and maybe the pictures of, I'm assuming that's you, with your wife
Yeah.
next that other picture, if that'd be all right.
Yeah. That's
Says-
my wife. She was a better Christian than me. She, when I met her after the war was over. Well, no, I dated a few times before I went in service. But after the war was over, I came back. She was teaching a Sunday school class. She started teaching when she was 18 years old,
Yeah,
a Sunday school class.
that's great.
And she was teaching little boys. And those little boys loved her. And when I started dating her pretty regular, we'd sit together in church. And those little boys would come and get between us. They didn't want me sitting close to that teacher.
Yep, I can see that. You mentioned some time ago, was it your grandfather that was in the Civil War? Or someone you remember?
My great-grandfather
Your great-grandfather.
was born 100 years before I was born.
Yeah.
But my daddy was born 100 years after George Washington was made president of the United States.
Your dad?
My daddy,
100 years after.
1889.
Yeah. Yeah.
1889 is when he was born, and George Washington was made president
Yeah.
100 years before that.
Right.
It sure collapses history.
Yeah, it does.
It just kind of brings it together.
Yeah. Now, was your great granddad still alive when you
No.
were? Okay.
No, my granddad wasn't even alive. Granddad Knott.
Okay.
He died in 23.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my daddy died at, he was 63 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was 27.
Mm-hmm.
My mother lived in this house 40 years after he died.
Mm-hmm.
I lived right down there.
Yeah.
I saw my mother every day. And when Tina and I got that motor home that you see sitting out there, or one light, and we'd be in California, which is 3 hours difference in time, I'd call her every night when we'd get to a campground. Well, sometimes it was 11 o'clock before we got into a campground, traveling. I'd call her, she says, I was waiting for you. She never went to bed until after I called.
Yeah.
And see, it was 2 o'clock in the morning.
Gracious. Yeah.
I was waiting for you.
Yeah.
I'd come home, she'd have, my mother would have all the papers. I took musical reserve there. And all the papers, if there was anything she thought I'd be interested in, she'd mark it.
Mm.
If we were gone 5 or 6 weeks, she'd have a stack of paper. Say, you might want to look over these.
So how old is this house?
This house was over 200 years old 50 years ago.
Wow.
It was an old house when Sherman's parts of his army marched down that road to go to Raleigh
Wow.
in April the 14th,
Yeah.
1865.
Wow, my goodness.
It was an old house then.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me cut the camera off. That's amazing.
But you know, this house never had electricity or running water in it until 1943
Mm.
when we moved up here.
Wow.